And AI may be the solution to some of those barriers. Analytics may be the solution, agents or automation. A lot of times, like, the solution is use your audit management platform a little better. And it's probably a combination of all those things, right? Those are all tools on the workbench to help you make the proverbial bookshelf. But I think when we think about our end goal, it not only helps us figure out the right tools to use, it also helps align our team around how they're using those tools and how they're thinking about working together.
This episode is brought to you by Greenskies Analytics, an audit analytics service provider that works with internal audit departments that have data analysts and are still frustrated with trying to make analytics actually work, aren't getting the expected ROI, who can't break through the communication barrier between the analysts and the audit team, and those that need experienced direction for an audit analytics strategy and process. Those that feel like they've wasted time and money on trainings, aren't getting the value they want, not prioritizing the highest risk areas for the organizations, or have projects that seemingly never get completed. Do you deal with any of that? If you do, go to the show notes of this episode and click the Greenskies Analytics link, or go to greenskiesanalytics.com to schedule a call and understand how Greenskies Analytics makes analytics actually work for internal audit.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Audit Podcast. I'm your host, Trent Russell, and today on the show, we have Charles King. He's a partner at KPMG and the US AI and internal controls leader. And so this isn't like someone who is an AI person, but not the audit person, or an audit person, but not the AI person. Charles sits in between both of them. So probably one of the go-to resources in the world when it comes to AI and internal audit. So we're super happy to have him on the show. Largely what we hit on was like, hey, what happened in 24? What's everybody doing or what did everybody do in 2024? Not exactly a benchmark study that we go into, but certainly something that you can kind of look at and go, oh yeah, we're kind of along that path, or we sit in this group or wherever that might be, and we need to level up and go to the next group up or on the maturity model, wherever that might be. So we definitely hit on 2024 rewind of sorts, and then what's happening in 2025. And not to give too much away, but agents. I was giving people listening time to fill in the blank there. I'm sure some folks already did that. Agents is probably going to be that word. If you're already tired of hearing about like Gen AI or ChatGPT or AI in general, you are definitely going to tire of hearing about agents. Probably, my guess would be sometime in Q2 of 2025 with some of the announcements that have come out lately and some that we're expecting early 2025. So we're talking agents. Charles does a really good job of kind of demystifying what agents are, gives a really good example of exactly what that means. And the last thing I'll mention is, if you've been listening, we ask pretty much every guest, and we have since, the summer or so, what have you been using ChatGPT or whatever your local or favorite LLM is lately? Like, what have you been using it for? Maybe even in your personal life. So for any cat lovers out there, you likely need to tune in to Charles's most recent use case with his LLM. All right, with that said, here we go. What is in your ChatGPT, Claude, what Gemini, LLM, whatever you're using, internal KPMG, LLM, whatever it is, what have you been using it for lately that might be maybe somewhat novel or interesting to the listeners? Personal or professionally, whatever.
Yeah. Well, I did a really interesting one yesterday. So my family, my wife especially, we foster kittens at the house, and we got a new batch of kittens that are like basically feral. And they're kind of like older than normal, and they are hissing at each other and they're hissing at us. And like, just, we've had a lot of litters of kittens, but like we've never had one that was quite this non-socialized, I guess.
Yeah.
So I was actually looking for advice for our pets to figure out how we can sort of tame these guys and make sure that we don't get scratched or bitten or anything. And it was actually, pretty helpful. They had some good guidance. So that was a new one for me. But probably my go-to outside of meeting minutes, which I think everyone does, is like I use it every day for revising. I tend to use it less for writing net new content. Like going from 0 to 1, I can almost always do a brain dump and think about what to say. But the polish and the ordering and the editing, like I find All of all of them, whether it's OpenAI or Anthropic, are just really good at that and much faster than I am.
Yeah. Me as a analytical person, I'm that way too. Like I can get it out initially and then I just overanalyze it to death. And to just have anything, a tool, a person go, no, just do this, this, and this. You go, yeah, sure, that's great. That's perfect. Fine, let's do that. So similar to the kitten one, I guess, and this is what made me think of it. And I can't remember if I talked about this on the show or not. So apologies to any listeners who are like, yeah, you said that, you told that story already. My kid is 6. And, I think as a parent, all you want is like, just tell me what is going on in your world. Please talk to me about what is going on. And he had like a bruise or something on his arm. I can't remember what it was. This was a while back. He wouldn't tell me what happened at school. And so this is when he was like going to bed. So I was like, all right, let me go to the bathroom real quick. So like I went to the bathroom and like pulled it open and like put on the voice feature. I was like, hey, my kid got a bruise on his arm at school. He won't tell me what's going on. What are like some good ways to get him to conversate with me and tell me, about his day or whatever? And it was like, you could try this, 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 and this. And I went, oh, that question sounds good. So like I went back, got in bed with him and I was like, and I can't remember the question, but whatever it was. And he was like, well, today, Steven and me were on the playground, and then a ball hit me on the arm, and that's why it bruised. And that was it for me. I was like, that's the best use of this thing I've ever had in my entire life.
I feel like, I mean, like that's amazing for parenting, but I feel like that's also like the manager part of my brain is like, well, ooh, that's really good when I'm doing one-on-ones with my team members or we're having team meetings. Like, I wonder if there's a way to, think about new questions to ask or how to sort of approach problems in a different way. I haven't really
Yeah.
thought about that like from a soft skills standpoint before, but that's actually not bad at all. I love that.
Yeah. I was a huge fan of that. So we're going to start like a dad GPT or parent GPT or something like
That's
that.
exactly what we need. Yeah, there was a website like that a while back where they had like activities for dads to do with their kids. And it was like a lot of it was kind of like the normal, like, go fishing or have a family movie night or whatever.
Yeah.
But they had some good ideas about like things that you could build in the garage or projects and stuff like that. And a GPT for that would be amazing. We
Yeah.
should start an app. All right, let's do it.
Especially this time of year, it's cold. We can't go to the parks and do all that kind of stuff. So we're just stuck inside all the time. So to find something that's good. Yeah, I'm gonna make note of that. We'll do that. Like, what can I do with a 6-year-old inside that's still kind of active? Because for me, once it drops below 70, like I'm not going outside. All right.
So good, like a man from the South.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, everybody, we'll get back to the guests, but real quick, just wanted to let you know, block your calendars for March 5th, 2025. If you attended the Audit Analytics and AI conference back in the fall, we're going to do a mini Audit Analytics and AI conference on March 5th. So it's going to be from 9 to 4. So we're going to go 9 to 12. Then we'll do an hour break, and then 1 to 4. These are Central Time, so Chicago time zone. All right, so go ahead, block your calendars off, and we'll make the announcement when registration opens. All right, back to the show. All right, so tell us what's going on AI wise. Like, what's kind of if you gave like a state of the union, maybe way of putting this relative to internal audit. What's going on? What are you seeing? What are your clients doing? What are you doing for your clients?
Yeah. Well, it's so interesting. If you'd asked me that question like a year ago, the answer would be totally different. I spent all summer, I went to, I think, every internal audit conference there was this year, and talked with a lot of people. And just in my normal like course of what I do at KPMG, I'm talking with clients a lot. Some of them are clients, some of them are audit clients, so they're kind of working with other firms, and some of them are just, people that are curious. And that we've seen this massive uptick in adoption over the past year. A year ago, if we were talking December 2023, I would have told you that, about a third of the companies I talk to have an AI solution that their internal auditors are allowed to use. That number is 60+% now. I would, it's almost flip flop that a third of people don't. And even that third, there's a pilot program, there's some skunkworks project. They've got one license that they're trying out. So this huge uptick, a lot of that I think has been driven by Copilot. But we also seeing a lot of white label AI as a service type solutions that companies are getting through their cloud providers. So now the conversations are really shifting. I think pretty much everyone is in this ad hoc stage of they've got a tool. They're learning how to use it. They're starting to do, some of the early things that you would do. I'm drafting scope memos. I'm looking at risks, control objectives, typical controls, audit test steps, things like that. Just trying. I think some of the leaders have really developed well-established prompt libraries right now where their teams can go and they can see prompts that have been battle tested a little bit, and they can kind of reuse things. Some of those are really sophisticated where they've had like proper, prompt engineers, if you will, develop prompts that are verbose and well crafted and structured. And some of them are just, simple, but they work. And then I think on the extreme edge, there's still a pretty small number of companies that have gone beyond the out of the box solutions and have started creating apps or really, really specific, repeatable use cases that their teams are able to use. So some of the ones that I'm thinking about, like one has a methodology chatbot essentially, so that this is like global organization that got auditors all over the world. They've got a professional practice team that people can ask questions to, but now their first stop is I'm going to go to the methodology chatbot and I'm going to ask questions about, I pulled a sample of 25, I failed one. Do I have to fail a control? Can I resample? Like, what do I do? Like, all of those questions get answered in the chatbot with nice little hyperlinks to the underlying documents. So there's stuff like that. Regulatory, like knowledge assistance seems to be a pretty common one, especially in financial services, asset managers and banks. The ability for auditors to go like look at guidance around, some law or reg or framework. That seems to be really popular. And that's that, I don't know, let's call it the top 5% of companies. But I will say, interestingly, that top 5%, they skew really heavy banks and technology. Um, but otherwise, if you like think about banks, especially banks like tend to be a little bit slow sometimes to adopt these new technologies because of the regulatory scrutiny and the impact of change or potential impact of change. And so while a lot of the leaders are some of the big banks, I was just last week, I was at a banking conference talking to a bunch of internal auditors, and I asked, I always ask first thing is, how many of you have a tool you can use? And I think out of a group of about 100 people, 3 people raised their hands.
Oh,
So you've got kind of extreme leaders
yeah.
in financial services and banking, and then you've got the majority is still in the very, very early stages there.
That's very similar to what we're seeing. Ours, I don't know if you guys have done surveys or something. Mine's very anecdotal, just in the folks that I talk to, but it's pretty much identical to what you said. It's financial services, tech-born companies. They're kind of leading the charge.
Yeah.
On what we're, just kind of like the custom build. We're going to build our own internal solution. And then service providers, we're starting to see more of those where they go like, hey, we have our internal GPT, we'll call it. So if you think, listeners, like if you think about your intranet, an intra GPT that you have to be on the network, all that kind of stuff. Because it's basically like, hey, we need to serve clients. So like, here's our client one, but then, hey, all back office folks, which, including internal audit, you can use this other kind of piece of it also to do yours. And so that's where we've seen it also a lot. And I'm starting to see more. I'm curious if you're seeing this, more of the enterprise wide, we have our own GPT or LLM solution that pretty much anyone in the company can use.
Yeah.
Are you starting to see more of those? If I'm starting to hear a lot more people go like, hey, we're starting to launch this thing, or like we're in the middle of it, we're developing it, something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's that's sort of table stakes for AI capabilities now. It's not prohibitively expensive. The building blocks and all the cloud providers make it fairly easy to engineer that, and dealing with access and data leakage and all that stuff is getting easier all the time. I mean, in the early days, that was tricky, and everyone was worried about like, how do I know that the intern's not going to be able to read the CEO's emails? But as people's knowledge has matured, as the capabilities of the tools have matured, that's gotten a lot better. So I think that's going to be there for pretty much everyone. I mean, if we have this conversation a year from now, I think everyone's going to have that in their organization. What's really been interesting for me is as we talk to internal auditors, and I know you do a lot in the analytics space, is this sort of thought around, is AI replacing analytics? Like what does this technology play now for me as a chief audit executive or as an audit leader? That's been a really interesting discussion as they get more and more capabilities and they see what they can do. They get Copilot, they get the white labeled, internal GPT to your point. Now it's like, well, they're experimenting with all the things they can use it for. And it's starting to, at least in their minds, a little bit displace analytics, displace automation. I'd love to hear your take on this, but I keep getting the impression that like I think analytics, traditional analytics that's going to look at like rows and columns data, like that is not going anywhere.
Yeah.
There's absolutely a role for that. There will always be a role for that. And the kind of conversational interface, at least the way most of us get it, like kind of text to text or
Yeah.
image to text, is not going to replace that anytime soon. I don't think it should. Like I don't think we need an everything audit tool. I think we need to think about, we've got goals as auditors that we want to accomplish, and those goals may be, we want shorter audits. Maybe we want more continuous monitoring or continuous auditing. We want to do 100% population testing, whatever that is, right? That's going to be different for different organizations with different pain points, but I think we've got to really pick the right tools for the job. And then that may be multiple tools for the job, but I don't think it's AI eats everything and then we don't need to worry about these other capabilities anymore.
I fully expected, I don't know, in 2024 for most of the conversation to be, we need AI, do AI, what's AI, how can we do it, what are the tools, all that kind of stuff. And so that's what we're kind of prepared for, but it's still been, I mean, we get a handful of those, but it's still mostly been, if it's an analytics conversation, this is how we can use AI to further support analytics or like to launch your analytics or whatever. So it's still, to us, it's a tool for analytics. Like we're still internal audit analytics. That's what we do. Here's how we use AI to support that, make it more efficient, more effective, et cetera. But yeah, there's still a handful of the, I think my favorite quote from someone recently was, I just want whatever the new shiny thing is. No. Like, all right, yeah, we could do that. That's fine. So that was
that.
a good one. And then we had a CAE said, "Hey, our CEO said go do AI," and so that's why I'm here today. I know it. All right, yeah, we could have that conversation too. But yeah, we're still largely analytics, and then using AI to support that. So, well, what do you see? We've talked like 2024. What do you see in 2025? What's the next thing? What are we going to be talking about that everybody's going to go, oh my God, if I hear about that thing one more time, I'm going to lose it.
It's agents for sure. Agents, right?
Yeah.
A lot of people have been talking about the launch of the agentic capability that Microsoft could put out a few weeks back. And they are, clearly are not the first to talk about this, but definitely I think the first to sort of commercialize it at scale. Like, Microsoft's platform is everywhere. And so when they launch it, it becomes available to a lot of people. So I think they're going to be leading the charge.
Charles, take a second, because I know most people don't know what we're talking about. Right now,
okay, fair enough. Sorry, I heard the word agentic so much times, so many times over the past few months. I forget sometimes. So the way I think about it and the way I explain it is, if you think about today, like let's take some simple task, like I want to use generative AI to write an email to Trent Russell, and so I'll go in and I'll say, I'm an internal auditor. I work for a manufacturer. I need to write a note to Trent Russell asking him to meet about blah, blah, blah. And I need him to prepare by getting these documents ready. And can you draft an email? Here's my scope memo. Maybe I'm going to attach to the prompt to explain the background of the audit. It's going to draft this really nice email. And then I've got this chat interface. Now I've got to copy whatever the output of that is. I've got to go over to Outlook, open it up, open a new email template, copy and paste that in, find Trent Russell in our address book, do whatever I need to do to get everything formatted, and then I'm going to send it.
Format.
Right. All of that. And, in simple terms, what agentic AI does is you can say, I want to write an email to Trent Russell about this audit. I can reference a file and it will actually it will open your email application. It will create an email template. It'll draft the language in the email template. It might even go into the global address book and find your address, right? And sort of do everything right up until the point where I hit send. So all of the formatting and all that. And that's a fairly simple agent, right? You can imagine like more complex use cases, but agents, fundamentally, unlike knowledge assistants, which a lot of us have, where you can ask questions and get answers, and that whatever you do with those answers is on you. Agents are actually going and taking action for you, and they're really powerful and really flexible, because if you think about the solutions we had for doing that kind of thing in the past, things like RPA or even some of like the powered suite of tools that help you create automation, they were very fit for purpose. You have to train. If I wanted to, have something that would draft an email, you'd have to have a kind of workflow just for that. And I would have like an email, tool. But the agentic AI, you don't have to do that so much anymore. If you say, I want to send an email to it, can take those words and translate that into all the actions that you need to take. And if you think about, a lot of the actions that we take, regardless of where you are, whether you're a chief audit executive that's been doing this for 20 years, or you're brand new, beginning auditor, a lot of the things we do every day on our computers are, I need to go find that file. I need to, where was that table again that I was looking at, or, whatever it is. And if you can just sort of say, like, go find this thing and bring it to me, that's really powerful.
Bring it to me and go do X with it even. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Or I've got meetings coming up tomorrow. I need a briefing book for these meetings. I want to remember what's the background on those meetings in advance of that. Or what should I be asking in these meetings? What's already, but like, there's so many things where if your tool has the power to not just index a bunch of files that you have in your file directory, but really be smart about connecting. I can look at your calendar. I can see who you're meeting with. Maybe I can see the topic. I can go through your email. I can go through your files. I can put a bunch of things together and just prepare something for you. Even using AI today, that's a lot of steps that somebody's got to take, and it'll save you a lot of time if you use AI. But agentic AI is 3x, 10x that. So it's really cool stuff.
I think for me, like there's always been this promise of like, hey, with analytics and automation, it's going to free up the auditors to think and go to higher risk areas or whatever. And that certainly is the case. But for me, and I've talked about this use case before, where I'd have to like, you're not in my network. I don't have access to your calendar. So I got to go to my calendar. I got to fill in Tuesday, 12/17. I'm free 1 to 3, 2 to 4, and then do the next day and the next day and the next day. And it didn't take a ton of time. I hated doing that so much. And it just like, it was a brain drain for me. I would do it and there was no sense of accomplishment after it. I absolutely hated doing that. And so we did automate all that to a degree. So it's a couple of clicks of a button, but like those types of things just wear me down and wear, I feel like, other people down, just the constant like clicking and where is this and all that. And so I really do think hopefully people will use it in a way to go, all right, because I feel like this usually doesn't happen. It's like, hey, we should be able to free ourselves up to think more. And then all we end up doing is just plugging in more work to fill that. But for people to actually be able to take a step back and go, okay, I did 20 hours of work in 2 hours. Let me just sit here and think about what the next best step is.
I mean, that's so huge. And you think about, if you take away all the button clicks and all the, administrivia that we have to deal with, I think a lot of time, like I would love more. I have a whole stack of books here that I'm trying to get through. And I don't have time to read them, and I think there's all kinds of tasks. I'd love to spend more time with my people. I'd love to spend more time like thinking about strategies and programs. I'd love to spend more time like interacting with clients or meeting new people. And you don't do it because there's so much other
Clicking.
stuff that needs to be done. It's
So much
important,
clicking.
right? There's so much clicking.
Yeah. I've been saying
Um,
it's for those that are kind
yeah,
of in the space-ish and know RPA or try to RPA, I say it's RPA that actually works, or intelligent RPA.
right,
For the people that know RPA, they go, oh, yeah, I think that makes a little bit more sense. So it's like the promise of RPA delivered.
right. Well, and what I think is going to be really interesting as 2025 will have agents, right? But we're not far away from our agents being able to talk to each other, right? So
Mhm.
in your calendar case, right now, your agent might be able to send me an email and ask me a question, and I can answer that email. But imagine when our agents can talk to each other and
Schedule a
my
call with Charles,
availability,
and then
right?
you and I never see each other, and it ends up on the calendar.
Right. Or my agent comes to me and says, "Hey, Trent wants to meet with you. Do
And
you
you
do
say
you want to
no.
do it? Here's some options. Do you want to talk to that guy?" But I think, like inside the company, it's going to be really powerful. But when you start to be able to interact outside the company, that's going to be really powerful too. And that's going to create a lot of new challenges, when you talk about like security, privacy, like what information is it going to give? There's going to be protocols will be developed um, to sort of manage that, I think, in a smart way. But that's going to be even more powerful. So we get this kind of light quality interaction out of the way, and hopefully pave the way for not just more free time for us, but when we do spend time together, there's less of the logistics and all that because my people can talk to your people, but it's all digital. It's all
Yeah.
digital people, right?
Yeah.
That's going to be a great future, I think.
Is there anything else in the agent space that you could speak to, maybe coming forward? Anything at all? Examples are always great. I appreciate the example you gave also, because I know early on, like I would watch video, with agents, and I would go, "Oh yeah, let's go," watch the video, and I go, "I don't really get it. It just kind of seems like LLM all over." But and so the use cases are starting to get kind of out there a little bit more. So any use cases or any other thoughts, if you want to, on closing on agents, the future of them, what you expect, how it's going to impact internal audit, anywhere you want to take that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think look that agents are really new, and honestly, I'm really new with them too. I mean, this like capability is, I'm still thinking of things to do all the time, but what I would love to see is the ability to create an agent that's not purely transactional, but agents that can kind of take on recurring tasks. So there's things that I do all the time. Every Monday morning, our system sort of compiles everything that happened in the firm over the weekend, and then Monday morning, I come in and I get a report of, here's all the things, right? And and so Monday morning, I need to go pull that report. I'd love to have an agent where I could say, "Hey, every Monday morning at 8 o'clock, can you just go pull the most recent version of this report? Put it here, and remind me to take a look at it, right? Or maybe even take a look at it, and here's 3 things I really care about, and tell me if any of those things get triggered." I think that would be really neat. I'm really interested in, in terms like real productivity gains. I'm really interested in number one, the ability to go out and be really targeted and selective about information that I want to see. I was talking with some bankers a couple days ago, and we were talking about how it's pretty easy now to create like a dynamic RAG, so a retrieval augmented generation solution to create a knowledge assistant, right? So if you have Copilot, you're probably familiar with this. At KPMG, the way we've structured it is any Teams channel or any SharePoint site, we can have a shared knowledge assistant. So I can take all of my audit work papers and put them in a SharePoint site, and everyone who has access to that SharePoint site can interact with those audit work papers. So they can ask questions like, "Are there any findings? Has this test been performed yet? What happens next in the process after the PO gets approved? What happens next?" And it'll go sort of look at a process narrative or flow chart and figure that out. That's just like a drag and drop. Anyone on the team can do it. So that's kind of table stakes now with the capabilities that you have through Copilot and some of these other tools. Really powerful, but but not uncommon anymore. But one of the challenges is that that's only as good as whether it gets updated, right? So we've got knowledge assistants for regulations internally. So if we want to go look at like the Code of Federal Regulation Title 12 that covers a lot of banks, like we have a knowledge assistant for that, and we can go ask questions about it. But regulations change all the time. And so somebody's got to be up to date with making sure that that when regulations do change, or even proposals come out, that may impact regulations, more or less imminently, that we become aware of that, and that's something that still a human has to go do. It doesn't strike me as a huge technological leap to be able to say, we can already do API calls through AI, conversational AI. If we have an agent that says, hey, I want you to go out every week or every month or whatever, I want you to go to this website, look for changes, and I want you to come back and update or propose updates to our knowledge assistant so that, when we learn about new regulations, like it's up to date, right? And we have some confidence that it's up to date. Again, the auditor in me thinks about like, well, there's a bunch of nightmare scenarios in that, data poisoning and completeness and accuracy, and how do you know? But I think, those are all like, that's not a reason not to do it. That's just a reason to have good controls and good processes in place. So I think like these kind of ongoing things. And the other thing that I always come back to, because I think one of the most, probably them, if this is anecdotal, but I would be willing to bet that I'm right. Like the biggest single group of people that has gotten productivity gains from Gen AI is coders, right? It's developers. They had Copilot, GitHub had Copilot launched way before the Office, the M365 productivity tools did. Even back in the early-ish days of the post like 3.5 GPT revolution, they were saying that like coders were using almost, I don't remember the exact numbers, but it's almost half of the code that GitHub Copilot proposed got committed to the code base. And in some of those languages like Java, it was much higher. It's like 3/4, right? 75% ish. And that's so impressive. And when we think about things that we want to be able to do and we can't do because we need some kind of application, we need some kind of interface, we need some kind of like API to do that. Now, most people have to go to a developer. Developers having a lot of productivity when we as auditors need to, write for an API or, write code for anything, right? Create a little app to do this thing we want to do. The ability to not just use AI to get code, but to actually like, do the process from start to finish, test it. Like agentic has the ability to do something like that. And that is hugely
Insane.
powerful, right?
Yeah.
That's maybe that's not 2025, but I don't think it's 2020. I don't think it's 2030,
Yeah.
right? I mean, we're getting close to that. So I think, I would really, really be telling everyone to, it's fine to crawl, walk, run when you get to some of these technologies, but we need to be thinking out in the medium to long term about how this is going to impact our businesses as risk
Yeah.
managers, our functions as leaders, and our people and our careers and our skill sets, because there's some really powerful stuff coming down the pike.
That's what we've been pushing, is to a degree, depending on the nature of the work that needs to be done, is you all who have no idea what a for loop is, or what a variable even is within like a Python script, or whatever, ACL, even if we go back to those days, even if you don't know that, you can get this written and create your own. I mean, there's a director who has zero tech background, like not even IT auditor, kind of writing SQL scripts every day now and just going like, yeah, I found this and I found this. And, well, he didn't write it, but the LLM did. And to be able to have everyone basically now be able to write a script, even if it's just, you don't need to build like a whole huge platform. You're testing a control. Just have a little Python script that'll test the population for you for any given control and tell it how to do it. is pretty nuts, and it's what everyone I felt like has always wanted. Initially, that was it. We're going to get the tool. Everybody's going to be a data analyst, and I think a lot of people went, "Oh, well, that's not exactly how it works," but you can get really, really close to that
You're
now.
getting close. I think just thinking about, I don't know a single chief audit executive in any industry that is really happy with their or satisfied, maybe
Sure,
is the better way to say it, with their analytics
we always
programs.
want more. Yeah,
Always want more, right? And it's never fast enough. And a lot of times it comes down to, you have this frequent disconnect between like the auditors that don't really understand analytics going to analysts and saying, here's what I need. And then you've got analysts that, maybe don't really understand the nuances of the audit you're working on. And so they maybe do what they're asked, or they try to
uh
bring ideas that may or may not be directly relevant to the audit. And there's this like sometimes the auditors don't always really know, um, what are the best ideas for how to use analytics in an audit. And I think AI is sort of the great equalizer with a lot of that, because one of the most practical and useful applications that anyone can do with any tool, whether it's Copilot or a white label GPT, or I would not recommend this, but even in some cases like a public instance, is using it as an analytics copilot, right? I need, to your point, I need to write a SQL query, or maybe I wrote it and it's not working and I don't really understand why. Or I've got, pick a software. I've got Alteryx or ACL or Tableau or whatever it is. And I can't quite remember how to make an interactive line chart. Like, can you talk me through the process? It's so good at doing that. And auditors who maybe are afraid to start that because they know it's going to take a lot of time because they don't remember how to do it, or they're afraid to admit, God, I just went to the Tableau conference. I should know how to do this, and I don't want to tell anyone that I can't. Right? Like this becomes like a much easier way, for them to get some of those skills and do some of those tasks in ways that are going to be much closer to what I think a lot of us really want, audit analytics teams to
yeah.
be
I like
focused on.
the basically the example of it's where you can ask all your dumb questions that you might not want to ask. That's where I find myself all the time. I don't know what it was. Something this week, something I had to sign, or a bank thing or something. I don't know what it was. And I was just like, I mean, I buy a car once, I bought a car once in my life, 16 years ago, and I don't know what this means. And I was like, but I probably should. Until I asked it, it's like, oh, it just means this. I went, oh, cool. So just sign there. Yeah. And I went, okay, that's great. Um, as opposed to calling the bank and embarrassingly being, I don't know what that means. What am I supposed to do with it? Or like legal stuff, especially, is really great. So yeah, I like that perspective of looking at it like that. Of this is where you can ask kind of your dumb questions, or like we'd tell people all the time. Especially, I won't name the tool, but this one analytics tool is like you have to be in it pretty much every day, or you're going to forget what happened. It is
Right.
not like riding a bike; it's the
Yeah.
exact
It's
opposite.
not.
But now, like, yeah, take a month off from it. Doesn't really matter. You can pick it back up and just start talking to it again. So
Yeah.
I like that
Absolutely.
example a ton. Well, all right. As we start to wrap up, I will give the floor to you. Anything that you want to leave the audience with?
Yeah. Well, what I've been thinking a lot about as I've had conversations over the past several months is, you know, we have all of these tools at our disposal. And one of the questions I get asked most often is, what are the best use cases for AI? What are the best 5 things I can do for AI? And, there's tons of answers for that question. And we've talked about some of them in the last few minutes, but it's a little bit like asking a carpenter, like, what are the 5 best uses for a hammer? Um, it's like kind of not the right question, right? The right question is, what are you trying to build, right? Do you want to build a bookshelf? Do you want to build a table? Do you want to build a chair? And then where you use the hammer just sort of depends on what step in the process you're in. And what I always encourage my clients and any leader I talk to that's thinking about this, I encourage them to think through, what is your end goal here? What are you really trying to accomplish? What's stopping you from accomplishing that? Like, certain things are taking too long. Your people don't understand certain things. You can't, if your goal is more assurance, why can't you test 100% of the population? Well, the data isn't structured right, or it's in a bunch of documents, or there's some barrier to that. And AI may be the solution to some of those barriers. Analytics may be the solution, agents or automation. A lot of times, like, the solution is use your audit management platform a little better. And it's probably a combination of all those things, right? Those are all tools on the workbench to help you make the proverbial bookshelf. But I think when we think about our end goal, it not only helps us figure out the right tools to use, it also helps align our team around how they're using those tools and how they're thinking about working together. It's so much easier to talk to your team and say, our audits take 16 weeks. I think they can take 12. Here's a bunch of tools to make that happen. The conversation for your team is so much clearer, and the sort of values around that initiative are so much clearer if you have that big, like, North Star objective. If your objective is, I want to use AI on X% of my audits, or I want to use analytics on X% of my audits, then it's much more nebulous. And even if you accomplish your goal, it's not clear that you really achieved anything different or new about, how your internal audit shop is working. So that's what I kind of keep thinking about as we have these conversations is just these, like, big picture questions about what do we want to do. Let's have really clear goals, communicate those goals to our stakeholders in the business, to our teams, and then just let the tools help us accomplish those goals.
Hey everyone, thank you very much for listening to this episode of the Audit Podcast. Whatever platform you're listening on right now, I'm sure there's a subscribe button somewhere, so please hit the subscribe button there. If you're listening through iTunes or Spotify, feel free to go give us that 5-star rating. It only took me about 16 seconds to give myself a 5-star review, and it really helps to get future guests to come on the show, so we'd really appreciate that. Lastly, be sure to check out the show notes and follow us on all our social media channels on Instagram, on LinkedIn, and on TikTok. Also, if interested, please sign up for our weekly newsletter from the Audit Podcast. Thank you all. Have a great one.